Hey folks, welcome back to the Rupedia world, and I am Abhinay Gupta. And today again we will be continuing with the standards in auditing, right? And the specific essay under consideration will again be essay 620, right? Using the work of an auditor's expert. And let me remind you that this is not the first lecture for this. We have already had, yes, 4 long lectures on it already, right? And this is definitely the last lecture that we will be having on 620. As I informed you in the very beginning that yes, this is going to be a deeper and the larger essay as compared to the other essay in the 600 series, right? Because there's a lot that you need to understand, there's a lot that you need to know. These are small specific procedure, right? Because when you talk about auditors, another auditor or the internal auditor, your scope with reference to them, like your interference in their work, is very minimal. Right? And your risk over there is also low because basically they may be chartered accountants, right? But when you're using the work of an expert, it's entirely a third party that you are involving who is not even of the same profession, right? So your degree of care, your degree of consciousness on that, right, will automatically increase, and hence you will have to perform various other procedures for that. You will have to be skeptical about things, and you will have to take more precautions. Right? So discussing about all those other aspects as well will make this essay longer than what we have studied in 600 and 610. So please don't be demoralized that yes, this is a very long standard. No, this is not a very long standard if you go by the text. But yeah, if you go by the understanding, if you go by the in-depth knowledge of the standard, yes, this will definitely be a long standard. But it is just about listening to these videos and following the parameters defined over here just once. After this, whatever notes you have, just open them, go through them, and you will automatically start recollecting. Okay, this is written linked to this. Your brain will automatically start working and looking out for what can it mean, or what is the main interpretation, right? Or what is the hidden fact behind it that we could not otherwise by plain reading try and understand, right? So let's not waste our time on that. Moving ahead, we have discussed the scope and objective. We have discussed the definitions, and we have discussed the first 5 requirements, right? Now we have the last requirement pending, which is evaluating the adequacy of the auditor expert's work, right? Now how do you evaluate the adequacy? Now today we will not be sticking to the same slide that you have been seeing over and over for the past 2 lectures. We will shift to a different slide, right? Which is evaluating the adequacy of the auditor's expert's work. Now basically, why do you think is it important for the auditor to evaluate the adequacy of the expert's work? Why do the auditor needs to evaluate the competence, the capability, the objectivity, how familiar is the auditor with his work, what are the procedures he is performing, right? What is the field of his expertise? Why is this thing so important? The basic one-line answer behind that is because that work of that expert will automatically affect the work of the auditor, will affect the nature, time and extent of the procedures that the auditor has to perform, right? If that is reliable, that is adequate, that serves the purpose, then the auditor need not go ahead with further procedures, detailed procedures, like, right? But if it does not fulfill the task, the auditor will have to go ahead with them. So that is what, when the auditor needs to determine the nature, time and extent of the procedure, he has to go through these things and analyze them. So we need to evaluate the adequacy, right, for or with respect to the findings and the conclusions of the auditor's experts, right? And for that purpose, the auditor, right, he could inquire of the auditor's experts' work, right? He would inquire, what are you performing, how are you performing, what are the considerations that you are taking for it, right? What are the legal requirements that you are complying with, what is the objective of your procedure, all these things, right? He can inquire about it from the auditor's expert, right? And then after getting an understanding, right, you had a discussion, you inquired about him, he gave you all the details, and now you know, okay, what is the direction that he is taking, right? Then what you do is you take his work papers, you review the work papers, you review the report, and then you get an understanding, okay, he was talking about this, he told me that he would be doing this, and this is what is the actual outcome. So first, when you had an inquiry, you generalized the term that okay, these are the basic objectives that you are trying to perform the work for. But when you get the working paper and the report, you get into a precise understanding of okay, this is what you actually meant. You generalize the concept in your inquiries and specify the same when you see the work papers and the report, And now when you have got an understanding, now when you think that yes, it is appropriate for you to go ahead with it, what you do is that you get into a detailed analysis. How do you do that? You observe the work. Now what do you mean by observing the work? Right? That is that when the expert, right, he is performing the procedures, whatever is needed. Maybe he is inquiring some people, he is valuing his, he's going for the physical physical evaluation of an asset, right? Whatever, right? It depends on the expert's field. It depends on the area for which you have employed him, right? So whenever the expert is actually performing his procedures, the auditor can be personally present, right? If you are not there, you have a team, you can allocate a staff, you can allocate a manager that, okay, you will have to work in hand with this expert and please observe the workings that he is doing, right? And then the manager will actually report and you will collaborate everything. One thing is observing the auditor when he, the expert when he is performing his procedures. Then you may also confirm relevant matters with a third party. That if the expert's work involves any third party, if it is a requirement that the work has to be conducted in collaboration with a third party, or you need some data, some findings, some communication with a third party, then you can also confirm the relevant matter from the third party directly by yourself as well. Then okay, you have some conclusions drawn by the expert, you have some findings of the expert. Now how do you verify that whether they are correct? One procedure is you go through the entire process that he has followed and check whether everything is correct. But overall, if you just want to get an idea whether it is pointing to the right direction or whether it is pointing to the opposite direction, whether on the face is it or isn't it looking correct, how do you do that? You compare it with the industry data, with the flow, with the previous year's financial, with the previous year findings, right? Which is actually in totality known as the analytical procedure. You analyze things based on the observation and based on the comparison, right? If you think that okay, these are going in line with what you had expected it to go, then there is high probability that he is going correct. But if there is a high deviation, then you will have to get deeper into it to understand whether that deviation is an actual deviation or is there a mistake that has been committed by the expert, right? So after performing that analytical procedure, you may also go ahead to recalculate the calculations that he has done, to recalculate and reperform the procedures that he has done. You can also examine the published data that has been published, such as the statistical report and etc. But those data will have to have been taken from authoritative sources, right? So these are when you want to get deeper into it and to analyze whether or not his work is appropriate, right? So you confirm it with the third party, you observe his work, you perform analytical procedure, reperform his task, reperform his calculation, right? See the statistical reports and everything, and that will help you. And that is actually in totality known as the collaborative procedures. And again, right, when you are performing analytical procedure or when you go through the entire collaborative procedure and you find that no, there is some deviation, right? Your expectation is at a different level and the findings of the auditor's expert is at an entirely different level. They are maybe both of them are at two different tangents. Then in that case, what do you do? Because we do not have an expertise, how do you judge, right? Because their expectations have all failed. Their analyticals have all failed. They collapse. Now what do you do? So in that situation, you can also take an help from another expert. That means for evaluating the work of an expert, you indulge another expert, right? And then that other expert will help you analyze, right? He will not get into the detailed procedure, but yeah, if he's an expert in that field, he can analyze at least the working papers and the work performed. He can observe the work performed by the expert and say that okay, he is either going good or he is not going good, right? And when whatever be the conclusion, then you will have to take your decision accordingly. And finally, whatever is the auditor's expert's report, you will have to discuss it with the management, right? Because again, what happened is the expert is actually trying to check and confirm the data that had been given by the management. That means even management had an expert or the management himself was an expert, right? Who has performed the data, who has prepared the data for the expert. So you will also discuss the findings of the auditor's expert along with the management. And then again, if there is any deviation, you will come to understand. That discussion actually is very helpful, right? If the management feels that no, there is a big deviation, right? You people can confirm it. You people can go ahead to discuss, okay, if this is a deviation, then who is at fault? Either the management is not going correct or the auditor's expert is not going correct. But whatever the situation, it is an alarming situation for the auditor because something or the other is wrong, right? He has to pay more attention and his risk of material misstatement rises at this point of time. Now further beyond, right, when you are actually trying to evaluate the relevance and the reasonableness of whatever the auditor expert gives you in the form of any report or in whatever manner, right, how do you evaluate the relevance or reasonableness of that factor is again a prime consideration. How do you do that basically? So first, if it is a matter of report, you will see whether the report is prepared the way it had to be. Now what is the way that the report had to be prepared? It had to be prepared according to the expert's profession, according to the standard that has been defined, according to the requirement of the law and regulation, right? It has to be consistent with those standards. Correct with that? So you will the first and foremost thing that you will judge is whether that report is consistent with the standards of the expert, right? And you know very well that whenever we issue a report, the first thing we mention into it is the scope of the work, what we have performed, what we have checked, and the report is also based on that scope itself, right? So the scope of the auditor's expert's work was already defined, right? It was discussed with the auditor, right? You along with the auditor's expert, you sat down, right, earlier, and you had a discussion of what would be the scope. Then that scope should clearly be expressed in the report, that yes, we have provided this report based on this scope, and we are not going beyond it. So please, when you are looking at our report, constrain yourself to this scope. Another thing that you need to understand is, okay, during the financial year for which you are auditing, whatever was the fact that appeared, that was reflected in the financial statement, but your audit period also extends beyond. If you remember, your accounting standard and your standards on auditing, both they stress on the subsequent period, the subsequent events. So even the auditor's expert may at times need to refer to the subsequent event if there is a change in the area or in the field that the expert is connected with. If something like that has happened, then you will also check whether or not the report mentions or contains a paragraph referring to the subsequent event. That yes, subsequent event occurred, there was this deviation, and due to this we have changed our report accordingly. Right? Those things also need to be checked. And then if the expert is working subject to any limitation or any restriction on it, then even that has to be mentioned very clearly in that report. Plus, how was the error and the deviation dealt by the auditor's expert will also be mentioned in the report. So basically, when you are actually evaluating the findings and conclusion, right, when you are evaluating the content of the report that the expert has submitted to you, you basically first you see whether the report is consistent with the standard, right? Then whether the scope is very well defined, right? Whether subsequent events have been taken into consideration, whether there is any limitation and restriction, and whether the errors and or any deviation which occurred, whether they have been dealt properly. So basically these are the 5 procedures or the 5 areas that you need to judge when you are holding the report of the expert, when you are trying to evaluate the report of the expert, right? So after you have dealt with the findings and the conclusions of the auditor's expert, right, you also go ahead to see what were the assumptions behind. So the significant assumptions and the method that was used to come to this conclusion, to come to this finding, is also very relevant and very important for you to judge. Because if the assumptions are not correct, if the assumptions are not at par with the requirement of the profession or of the standards, right, or the legal regulatory requirements, then the entire procedure goes for a toss. If the assumption that you have taken is not correct, how do you think that you have reached a good conclusion or appropriate conclusion? That is very much like impossible, right? Why did I say very much? Because there is a possibility that okay, with the wrong assumption also you read the right conclusion, but that is an exceptional situation, right? So let us understand in detail what are the significant assumptions and methods used, or basically how do you evaluate the significance of the assumptions and the method used. So when you are basically trying to consider that how do you deal with the assumptions and the methods that have been adopted by the expert, you also have to at the back of the mind understand, right, that it was also the duty of the expert to evaluate the assumptions and the methods that were applied by the management, right? Take it this way, you have found difficulty in auditing a particular field, right? Why? Because you have no expertise in that field. So what you did next is that you appointed an expert in that field. What will the expert do? The expert will come, the expert will evaluate that field, evaluate the data, and give you a report, right? Now, when you go on to judge the assumptions and the methods that is being applied by the auditor's expert, you will first also have to determine whether or not the auditor's expert has checked the method and assumption followed by the management. Because now it is an overload or double-decker assumption and method. Right? First, the management or the management's expert, they have applied certain assumptions and certain methods. Right? Now to check those, you have also appointed an expert, and the expert will also make certain assumptions and certain methods, right? And then the report will come to you, right? So there are basically two assumptions and two methods that you need to check. One is what was followed by the management, and second is about the auditor's expert. But again, your duty is reduced. Why? Because one layer of checking the assumption and method, that is of the management, is the responsibility of the auditor's expert. And what comes to you is to check the assumption and methods followed by the auditor's expert. Getting the point? It is a link, it is a connect over there. Management is reviewed by the auditor's expert, and the auditor's expert on the whole is reviewed by the auditor. Right? Now again, if I take you to a flashback, right, then we have discussed standards in auditing SA 540. You know which was it? It was the auditing accounting estimates, including fair value accounting estimate and related disclosure. So over there you were given certain procedures of how you go ahead with evaluating the assumptions and methods applied by the management, right? So similar things, right? The procedure that was laid down for you over there with respect to so how you go ahead with the evaluation of the assumptions and the methods applied by the management, right? So similar things would also be applicable for you, or that can be used by you when you are evaluating the assumptions and methods of the auditor's expert, right? Because ultimately what you have to actually consider is the assumptions and the methods, right? You don't care about who has made it, the management or the auditor's expert. The criteria of evaluating the assumption and method will remain the same. So you can also adopt standards on auditing 540 for this purpose, right? Now when you go ahead with evaluating the significant assumptions and methods of the auditor's expert, right? So first thing you do is you check whether or not they are generally accepted within the auditor's expert's field. If those methods, if those assumptions are generally followed into that field, right, or by the professional standard, it has been declared that yes, you can follow these assumptions and these methods, then it is very convenient for you, because okay, what was directed has been performed. It is all fine with you. Secondly, what you have to check is, apart from that legal regulatory requirement of his professional standards, right, they also have to be consistent with the financial reporting framework that is being applied to prepare the financial statement by the management, or that has been applied by you to audit, right? So his professional standards, his law, his regulation, his requirement is relevant, but your financial reporting framework is also relevant. So his assumptions, his methods should be in line with both of them, right? And if at any point of time the auditor's expert is using any specialized models, right? And when we talk about specialized models, that means those models have been prepared for this specific task, and they're specialized means they have been recognized and they have the repute, right? So if they have followed those specialized models, then you can depend upon them easily, right? And finally, the last and the important thing that you need to understand over here is that the assumptions of the expert should be in line with the assumptions of the management, right? And if there is a difference, you need to evaluate who is not in line or who is not at par, who is deviating. Is it the management who is deviating, or is it the auditor's expert who is deviating? And whosoever is deviating, basically you need to evaluate whether he is deviating for the right cause, right? And that will actually be your purpose of examination, right? In the two layers of examination about the assumptions and methods of the management and the assumptions and methods of the auditor's expert, right, you basically had to deal with the assumptions and methods of the auditor's expert. But in situation where the management and the auditor expert, they do not agree to any particular assumption or method, then you need to evaluate both of them, right? Then your responsibility extends, and there even the risk extends, because they are not agreeing to each other. Who is correct is your call now, right? It's you as the auditor who needs to decide who is correct in this situation, right with it? And the next evaluation that you have to make is about the source data which is used by the auditor's expert. right? You will have to evaluate whether that source data was the correct data. So when you are actually trying to evaluate the data, you do not evaluate anything related to the expert, because the data is sent to the expert either by yourself or by the management, right? So when we are talking about evaluating the genuinity or the correctness of the source data, then you will have to check the data that is lying with the management. So you will have to verify the origin of the data. From where has the data come? Is it the ERP of the management, or is it any other manual sources, or is it any other automated sources, any report, any result, right? So you will have to judge the origin of the data, and and you have to understand, right, how has the data been originated. You will have to check the genuinity, and you will have to verify that yes, the data which is originated is the correct data. Why? Because the process of origination was correct, right? And if there are internal controls that have been applied in that procedure, in that process, then you will also have to determine the applicability, the effectiveness of the internal control system that has been applied over that data, right? And where it is applicable, you may also have to test the transmission to the expert. That means, okay, I understand the data is coming out from the relevant source, the data is very correct, the report has been generated very well, but now when you are sending it to the expert, maybe you are not sending the exact data that has been generated. That may get tampered on the way, right? So you will have to check that yes, the data that you have checked from the origination, right, as per the internal control, it is the same data that has been forwarded to the expert now. And you will also have to review the data to check whether it is complete, right? You cannot send an incomplete data, because the entire evaluation goes for a toss gun, and that the data should be consistent with the other data that you have obtained, right? But again, there is one point of consideration that should come to your mind. You should think that, okay, we have involved the expert. Why? Because that is a particular field about which the auditor has no knowledge. Alright, it is a technical field. It is a field apart from accounting and auditing. So maybe even the source data is technical. Maybe you are sending some reports, you are sending some evaluation, some graphs, some technical and analytical data to the expert, right? How do you evaluate it when you have no knowledge about it? So in that case, right, if you do not possess the expertise to evaluate the data, what you do is you ask the expert to evaluate it for you. You tell him that, okay, we don't depend on the source data, we have not checked the source data, so before starting your work, it would be better for you to check the source data by yourself. And what you can do is you can take an understanding of how are you checking it. You can observe its procedures, right? You can follow all the procedures that you have followed for the conclusion and the reporting by the expert, right? And then check that, okay, if they are checking the source data and they are complying, or they are depending on the source data, considering it to be correct, then even you should be sure that yes, the source data is correct, right? That is all about the source data used. That is all about evaluating the adequacy of the auditor's expert work. So you evaluate the assumptions and methods taken, you evaluate the source data, and then you evaluate the finding and the conclusion, right? So that is all that you have to evaluate with respect to the auditor's expert's work. The source, the assumption, that is the process, and then the conclusion, right? Input, processing, and output. We can take it that way to remember it, right? The next, we also need to understand the response to the inadequate work of the expert. That means if the expert does not provide the adequate report, the adequate result, then what do you do? How do you respond to it? Now think, there can be situations. The auditor's expert has given you certain work, right? The results, the conclusions that has been given to you by the auditor's expert, and you find it to be inadequate. Now the first question is, how do you find it to be inadequate? Either you have performed additional procedures, or you have performed all the task of evaluation that we have seen in the previous slide, right? I'm talking about the slide. You have followed all these procedures and you find that the data is inadequate. Then what do? You follow further procedures to confirm whether or not it is actually inadequate, right? And then you may also need to discuss with the management or involve an additional expert to evaluate the work of this expert. And at the end, when you have been through all these procedures, you have tried to employ all the sources to evaluate the data, and finally you conclude that no, it is actually inadequate for your purpose, and you are not able to get any evidence from any other sources, then you have been left with nothing but an option to modify your opinion, right? And that will be done in accordance with Standard on Auditing 705, right? Because the auditor has not obtained sufficient appropriate audit evidence. It is as simple as that, right? So you may also disclaim the opinion that, okay, over here I will not give the opinion. Why? Because I don't have access to the relevant data. Or maybe you modify that, apart from this, rest are all the things that I have evaluated are good, but this is one modification and I can't express my opinion on the same. Right, so we have finally reached the reporting stage, and the last thing that we need to discuss over here is the reference to the auditor's expert in the auditor's report. So in some cases the law and regulation may require you to make a reference to the auditor's expert, right? Like in the case of the public sector, where you have to maintain the transparency, you will have to say that, yeah, these portions have not been performed by me, right? Because I did not possess the relevant expertise, but we have involved experts and these are the experts. So if you want to rely upon them, rely. Right? We have mentioned the name of the experts over there in order to promote the transparency over there, right? Because the law and regulation are strict with respect to the public sector entities, and over there transparency is very important. So you may have to refer to the auditor's expert who had been involved in the procedure. And otherwise, if you're making any modification, right, then you may refer to the auditor's expert that he was appointed, he has performed the task, but since we could not rely upon his task, we are issuing this qualification, we are issuing this modification, and he was the auditor's expert for this purpose, right? But again, before doing this, you will have to take the permission of the expert, right? There are sources or there are situations when you may need a permission of the auditor's expert before making any reference about his name into the auditor's report. But yeah, if it is required by law and regulation, definitely you will not need any permission. But otherwise, if you yourself voluntarily want to introduce the auditor's expert to the users of the financial statement, then you will have to take his permission for the same. And that is all about SA 620. We are done with it. So I hope although this essay was a little lengthy essay, but you have been able to follow through it. But otherwise also the videos are still available for you, right? You can go on, watch them as many times as you want, right? And if you did not understand the standard in the very first go, next time don't try to give in your time sitting specially for this, right? You have options to go through, fast forward and speed up, then check and then go back and stop and then detail and analyze in detail what are the areas that you did not understand. But before again going through the videos, please try and read the text, right? That will be recommended, because once you go through the text, because you think that things did not seep into your brain, but they actually did. They have entered your brain, and now when you read the text on any notes that you're following, you will try and recollect and connect things. And if you are successful in doing that, then you have actually gone through these videos very well and you have grabbed them. But if you're not able to do it, there may be certain situations or certain areas that you may need to review. The videos are always with you. Please go back, review them, and then move ahead, right? This being an important standard, you have been asked questions from the standard in the past, right? And you have reference to these standard questions in the practice manual as well. So please do not neglect it just because of the length. And as I told you already, that after we are completed or we are done with all the standards, we will also discuss each and every question of your practice manual, right? The chapter 1, the standards. There are around 45-50 questions over there, right? We'll discuss them. But while we're discussing those questions, we will not take a lot of time and get into the details. We would quickly swipe through it. Why? Because we would have had all the discussion in the class. So please stay tuned for that also. After we have completed, we'll go back to that. And next we'll start with Standards on Auditing 700 series, right? So please stay tuned, and that is one of the most important thing because that has the high weightage. If I say that 40 marks in your examination, 40 to 50 marks are covered by the standards, and we say that CARO covers more 20 marks or 10 marks or whatever it is, then your reporting, understand, when you talk about CARO, you have to make reference to the standards in the 700 series as well. Why? Because reporting actually comes in the 700 series. The CARO is very limited now. It is limited up to the 12 points. No more 20 to 21 points over there, right? But all the reporting criteria of how you prepare the report, what is modification, what is emphasis and everything, all these will be contained in SA 700 series. And that is what we will be taking up next. So stay tuned for that. This is Abhinay Gupta. I'm signing off from this video, and I'll come back to you with reference to the standards in the 700 series. And that being the most important standard, please come back for that. So this is Abhinay Gupta signing off. Thank you and bye-bye.